The book is one of the human development books and is directed to people who want to live an unusual life. It talks about the shocks that one feels, and that a person does not necessarily have to be positive all the time, as the key to happiness and strength is in dealing with adversity better. In the chapters of the book The Art of Indifference, he discusses how a person can overcome the obstacles of his life in a logical way, away from evading and fearing them. For decades, we have been told that positive thinking is the key to a happy, wealthy life, but the writer faces that positivity. Manson does not evade the facts or sugarcoat them. Rather, he tells them as they are, a dose of raw, honest, and refreshing truth that is what we lack today. Let us all work to have a good feeling, which has invaded contemporary society, corrupting an entire generation that has begun to win gold medals simply for coming to school. The writer advises us to know the limits of our capabilities and accept them. And to realize our fears, our shortcomings, and what we are not sure of, and to stop evading and fleeing from all of that and start facing the painful truths, so that we become able to find what we are looking for in terms of boldness, perseverance, honesty, responsibility, tolerance, and love of knowledge. Not every person can be distinguished and superior. There are successful and unsuccessful people in society. Some of this reality is not fair and is not the result of your fault. It is true that money is a good thing, but your interest in what you do with your life is much better. Experience is the real wealth. It is the moment of a real, honest conversation with someone who holds you by the shoulders and looks into your eyes. Do not try to. Don't try. In this chapter of the book The Art of Indifference, the writer talks about the hero of a story who struggles for what he wants, never gives up, and then in the end achieves his craziest dreams. However, after he passed away, he wrote on his grave, "Don't try. Happiness is a problem." In this chapter of the book The Art of Indifference, the author talks about the hero of a story who struggles for what he wants, never gives up, and then in the end achieves his craziest dreams. He talks about a young prince who lived all kinds of comforts and then went out into the world to know true suffering to be in the end. Buddha. You are not special, This chapter is a new story, of an active person who sees life in front of him, is positive and values himself to the utmost extent. He is an important person in his perspective and everyone needs him. He has a list of the names of important and famous people around the world who have dealt with him and asked for his advice. He does not stop talking about himself, but he in fact, it is not that much, but much less than that. He is still a leech on his parents, sucking their money for fun, parties, and living, and his uncles and aunts were not spared from his financial requirements. He persuades business owners to partner with them, and pressures them to give him a chance to give a speech in front of them. The audience does not know what to say, and when you criticize them, they describe you as ignorant and stupid, jealous of them and their successes. The value of suffering. The Japanese lieutenant, who was told by the emperor during America's war on Japan to fight to the last breath and not surrender, made him not believe anything related to the end of the war and that they leave the jungle of Pauling to return to their country, where he remained for 30 years after that, hiding in the jungle, causing panic to the owners of the place, and killing two friends for nothing, except living on insects and rodents, sleeping on the dirt, and endless suffering. You are always choosing. If you find yourself miserable in your current situation, it is very likely that this feeling is caused, at least in part, by something beyond your control. There is a problem that you do not have the ability to solve, a problem that was imposed on you without a choice on your part. However, when we feel that we have chosen our problems, we feel empowered by them, as if we have been charged with new energy. When we feel that our problems are imposed on us against our will, we see ourselves as miserable and we see ourselves as victims. You are wrong about everything, and so am I. The writer says in this chapter, I was wrong at every step of my way. I was wrong about everything throughout my life. I was wrong about myself, others, society, culture, the universe, and everything. Failure is the path to progress. If someone is better than you at something, it is very likely that they failed at it more than you failed, and if someone is worse than you, it is likely that the reason for this lies in the pain of the long learning process that you went through. This is what this was explained by the writer who gave an example of a young child learning to walk. How much will he fall to succeed in the end? The importance of saying no. Failure is the way forward. In this chapter, the writer talks about the boy who decided to get another taste of life away from his homeland, and unlike his friends who got married and had their own families and their own jobs, he decided to travel to 55 countries for work, pleasure, and to experience freedom. After all those visits, he came to the conclusion that freedom is beautiful, but it is meaningless. To no avail. After his visit to Russia, whose people are characterized by frankness without compliments, which made him take a lesson from them, which is to be frank and honest in expressing his feelings, and he should not torture himself at the mercy of the opinions of others. The importance of saying no. Failure is the way forward. The writer talks in this chapter, the boy who decided to taste another taste of life away from his homeland, and unlike his friends who got married and had their own families and their own work. It is meaningless and useless. After his visit to Russia, which is characterized by frankness without compliments, which made him take a lesson from them, which is to be frank and honest in expressing his feelings, and he should not torture himself at the mercy of the opinions of others. And then you die, and then you die. In the last chapter, the writer talks about the conclusion of life and that the point is that our life is not a mere coincidence. We were created for a purpose that we did not know, a purpose that we will know halfway or at the end, or we may not know it, but there is certainly some purpose to our existence. But you can reinforce that more. With your hand, you can create that goal. With your death, you will think that everything will end, but the story of your immortality can be written by you. You can make others remember you, by doing something, by developing something that enters scientific encyclopedias, by a human act that makes you remembered by many people. Of the people whose lives you changed. Quotations from the book. We are not all exceptional. The value of honesty is important, as this value makes you know yourself more, makes you know your advantages and disadvantages. Self-development lies in not being afraid of failure, and that the more you fail, the more you are able to engage in experiments and projects. Don't try. Genius does not lie in overcoming impossible obstacles, nor in developing oneself, but in being completely honest with yourself. Suffering is biologically beneficial. It is nature's means of inducing change. Say no, reject what you see that keeps you away from what you want. No one wants to stay in a relationship that does not make him happy, and no one wants to stay in a job that he hates and does not believe in. Pain helps us see what is good for us and what is bad, it helps us understand our limits and not exceed them, and suffering is the motivation for change. How do you become happy? Happiness comes from solving problems. It is a form of action, it is an activity and not something magical that falls on us from the sky. Failure is the path to progress. The more you fail and try, the more susceptible you become to experiments and projects. Mistakes are part of the process of self-development. Where does motivation come from in human life? From action. You have to do something, even if it is small, until the inspiration comes to you to do something bigger, and so on. There is no exceptional person, neither you nor I. There is no special person. An excessive sense of specialness makes you forget the feelings of others around you. Do not deceive yourself about that. Studies show that the correlation between happiness and material success quickly approaches zero after a person is able to provide for his basic material needs. You are truly great. You are not great because you invented an application for the iPhone, nor because you were able to finish your studies before others. You are truly great because you are able to face endless confusion, and in the face of inevitable death.